Now, the first thing I told my son's 12 years old, and I had him read Seeds of Greatness before we went on there. I mean, think about that. Well, actually, at the time he was 11, and I forced him through Seeds of Greatness before we went, which is another book that Dennis Waitley wrote. And we got there, and I said, now, Christopher, you got to realize that Mr. Waitley does this about 150 times a year, and so don't be surprised, because you know how kids are. I mean, they just chatterbox, right? You know, especially because I'd given him all this fodder by reading his book in the first thing, and I thought, oh, maybe I've gotten myself into trouble. And I said, you know, just don't be surprised if there's an issue. You know, if he's kind of, you know, separates himself from us, because he's a different day, a different driver, a different person every day. Now, one of the stories that he tells in Seeds of Greatness is when he was in the Air Force or whatever military branch he was in, he was a pilot, and they trained them by sending them down into that dunk tank, right, where they drive you down into the pool and they flip you over, and we're just pulling in, and he was on his way somewhere. We were dropping him off to go somewhere, and Christopher, just as we pull into the driveway of the hotel, Christopher starts into this whole thing about, tell me all about that dunk tank thing where you drive in there. We literally pulled up just as he was asking the question. I got out of the car. I moved around to the other side of the car. I was just playing limo driver, right? And I opened the door for him, and I sat there. And I sat there, and I sat there, and I sat there, waiting. Because Dennis Waitley took the time to make the difference in the life of a child. And I thought, what a tremendous, powerful sign of humility. I mean, a guy like Dennis Waitley could come and go and get in and get out and, yeah, nice to meet you, sign the autograph as he's walking and doing his thing. And I thought, that is really powerful to me. Not only to me, it makes a great story for me, but it makes a great impact on my son. It's a thing he'll remember for the rest of his life. I told him, I know this doesn't mean a big deal to you, but it's a big deal to spend 3 days with Dennis Waitley. You're going to remember this the rest of your life. The next story, and the one that I'd like to close with before I wrap up for us, happened to me when I was 11 years old. When I was 11 years old, I got the best job of my life. When I was 11 years old, I got a job that was better than the job I have right now. And I love to do what I do right now. This job was way better than that. When I was 11 years old, I came home one day. I'll never forget, as long as I live. I came home and my mom had a door on a sign on the door that said, "Welcome to the home of the newest ball boy for the Seattle Supersonics." I was 11 years old, and I went in, and I started working as a ball boy for the Seattle Supersonics. I mean, it was a dream come true. 7 years, from the time I was 11 till I was 18. The first year, you probably remember the year we started out 5-12, or 5-17. I got there when we were 2-11. We switched coaches. We brought Lenny Wilkins in. We went all the way to the championship. We lost the championship that year. The next year, when I was 12, we won the world championship. I was in that ticker tape parade. I don't know if you remember that. I mean, I know you don't remember me, but you probably maybe remember, you know, I was the little runt in the back going like this, right? And but I want to tell you a story that happened to me. A few weeks into my job, I fell off a roof and I broke both my arms. I'm 11 years old. I break both my arms. And you know how they set your arms, right? You know, cast up to here. And I come walking in for work one day. And I walk up to Frank Furtado, and I don't know if you know Frank Furtado, but he's an old curmudgeon type, and he scared me to death back then. And he was taping the heels of Dennis Johnson. And Dennis Johnson, you know, they both just laughed. They said, what happened to you? Well, I fell off a roof and I broke my arms. And I said, can I keep my job? And Frank Furtado says, you can keep your job if you can do your job. And I'm like, okay, what's my job? And I remembered that one of my first jobs I did every time I went there was to do those big orange canisters of Gatorade and to take them from the locker room to the basketball court. In the Coliseum, which is now Key Arena, that's about 500 yards. So I go in there, and I get these orange things, and I unscrew the lids, and then I rip open the thing, and I pour the stuff in there, and I put the hose in, and then I stir it like this, and I screw the lid on. I do that with 2 of them. And then I get them by the pinkies, and I'm carrying them, dragging them through the Sonics locker room. And as I'm dragging them through, Dennis Johnson says to me, hey, when you get those outside the door, wait for me. I'm going out to shoot for a minute. Because they go out and they shoot, and then they come back, have a team meeting, then they go out and shoot as a team. And I went, okay. I mean, I'm the follower, right? You just do what you do. You do what you're told. So I go outside and I sit down on the canisters. Pretty soon DJ comes out and he hands me the ball, and he picks up those canisters. Now, about the first 200 yards, we're in a tunnel. About the last 300 yards, you're walking through the crowd, people asking for autographs, people looking at him. NBA basketball star, 5-time NBA All-Star, 9-time all-defensive team. Guaranteed entry into the Hall of Fame of basketball. One of the greatest defensive players ever. Superstar. 6 weeks without Frank Furtado's knowledge, leader carried followers water. Why? So I could keep my job. Now you might say, well, what's the practical implication? I'll tell you the practical implication for DJ. See, back then, it was before all the microbrews and all that stuff, and after the game, one of my jobs was to hand out beer to the players. And we always had about 24 Budweisers and about 6 Heinekens and about 6 St. Pauli Girl beers. I remember the names and everything. Most everybody drank Budweiser. Guess who drank Heineken? Follower took care of leader. Every single time, DJ drank Heineken. Never drank the bad stuff. I mean, I gave him the good stuff. I'll tell you why. Follower was serving leader. Why? Because leader served follower. His humility earned a devoted follower. I mean, I took care of all the other players as well, but I mean, he got preferential treatment. I followed him. What could you do tomorrow to humble yourself with the people who work with you? To go in there to take a whole different task, instead of being a taskmaster, but to humble yourself and say, what can I do to serve you? What could you do if you just walked up and said, hey, what can I do to make your job easier? Is there anything I can do, something I can take off of your plate to make this work? I just want to readdress them very quickly. Communication. What can you do tomorrow to communicate? Make the hard decision. What hard decision do you need to make? Execution. What first step can you do tomorrow to execute the plan? Realistically assess. Maybe it just means taking the legal pad, going through the people, listing out the strengths, listing out the weaknesses, listing out are they in position or out of position. Valuing the relationships of the people in your organization. Taking a look at the wholeness of your integrity and saying, I will make this decision about who I am as a person in my areas of integrity. And what can you do to serve those who follow you and in turn gain even more devoted following? These are the things that will make you the kind of person who doesn't just have one or the other, but you have skills that are tremendous. You'll have character that is tremendous. In doing so, you will garner people's devotion and following, and you will indeed become an extraordinary leader. Thank you.